do that. Okay, welcome today. We are doing our third session for career ministry, fall of 2022, our second year as a career ministry. We're celebrating this month. We are pleased to have Greg Mechler in as our speaker. And I first listened to Greg before the career ministry began, when I was researching ideas of how we could help our parish in the middle of the pandemic. And I had moved from Georgia, and there's some really great career ministries in Georgia, but we didn't have a lot of that here. And St. Jude is the only one that I found in a Catholic church, locally, especially. So I listened to some of their Zooms and was inspired and talked to him about their experience. And then we've been a little bit partners on some different things, including a workshop that he's planning on talking about. I'm assuming today. They moved their format from more of a Zoom, weekly type program to putting it on the weekends, which works out great because there's no way, for any of you that know my kids' sports schedules, there's no way that I can do a weekend like that. So it works out great because he can send people here for our bi-monthly, and we can send people there to get a really in-depth, thorough training. So I do highly encourage you, if you have other job seekers in your networks, to go to that, because I've heard great things from other job seekers. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Greg and let him be our speaker today. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Tracy. I'll need to, we got a couple of technical things. I've got to share my screen and get the slide presentation up and running here.
You're on a Mac, I see.
Okay, yes.
Yeah.
Now, can you all see this? Is that coming through okay? Hopefully. So, yeah, one of the things that happened at St. Jude's is with our, COVID changed everything, I think, for just about everything. Yeah, so we determined that the Zoom, the weekly Zoom meetings were just not the most effective way to communicate the set of skills that a job seeker really needs to accomplish the goals that you need to accomplish. And so we decided to change our format, and we had a curriculum which was put together by Jack Bick, who was the former director of the Career Alliance, but then he went and moved to Florida about 3 years ago, actually, right during the COVID stuff. And so he wasn't able to coordinate the program anymore. That's when I came and got involved in it. And so what we decided to do was to put together a full seminar that covers the whole system of job search, from the start to the landing and the negotiating and actually onboarding. And it's great to hear that two of you have actually landed now. So and that's wonderful. And Kim, I'm sure you're not gonna be out there very long. But one of the focuses that we have is helping people understand the system of the search, and that it is a system. It's not just a bunch of individual things that you do kind of randomly. But what we found over the years is a lot of times job seekers come in to the program, and that's kind of what they've done. It's just, well, I got my resume and I've talked to some people and I've done this and done that. And they really haven't put it together in terms of looking at it as a system. And so that's how we approach it here. So The next workshop we have is coming up this Saturday, 9 a.m. to 4. It's free. There's no charge, and what's included in that is a copy of the book that Jack Beck wrote called The Champion Way 2.0. And this is a really step-by-step manual for conducting a high-performance job search. And that's why we say land in 4 to 8 weeks, because people who do the work in the sequence that is presented typically are ready to go. They can basically get out and execute what needs to be done to land a job, and that within that time frame. And Jack got a lot of data. He was, part of his background was being a career coach, and so it was a fee-based coaching program. He still does a little bit of that online, but I think he's now pretty much fully retired from doing any coaching at this point. But anyway, there's lunch and snacks included along with a copy of the book. And it's really a good opportunity to come in and recharge your job search. So this is a little picture of the book itself, The Champion Way. And the workshop, of course, is really designed to walk through the book very briefly and show people how to use it, so that when you are finished with the workshop, you've got a good understanding of what to do, how to do it, why to do it, and when to do it. So if that's done, then it gives you the basis for a lifelong employability system. So you do this once, you may have to go back, invariably, even those, Scott and Gabby, you've landed now, but who knows what's going to happen at another 2-3 years down the road. You might have to come back to this, and if you've got a system that you've worked on already, it's much easier to put it into play. You know what to do, when to do it, how to do it, all of that. So today I'm going to walk through. Well, first of all, I do have a little introductory page here, and I spent about 18 years in corporate business, primarily involved as both on the operations management side and in that role hiring lots of people at all different levels: management, sales, drivers, you name it. So had a lot of experience in the hiring mode, and then in '94 started a consulting firm. So our mission was to help companies do a better job of hiring, and so I've done that since 1994, and we do some training around interviewing and helping hiring managers make better, more thoughtful, and better decisions, basically. I also am a certified consultant with Professional Dynametrics, which is a behavioral assessment tool. Have a couple degrees and live here in Allen. And so that's a little bit about me. Now, this is really the core of what we're going to do today. And by the way, if you have any questions or something pops up, you want to make a comment, just either raise your hand or just jump right in and do it and speak up. So we'll have it's pretty informal with just really just the 5 of us here talking, so we can do it like a conversation. But this is one of the first things we do in the workshop, is really look at this flow chart, which is really depicts the system and the sequence of doing things to accomplish the goal of landing. And then if you land here, and then that goes on into, oops, I didn't mean to go there, a career. You really want a fulfilling career. So this is designed to help you really get to that, to not just a job, but a career. So it all starts back here at the first step. When a person becomes unemployed for whatever reason, is really doing this self-audit. It's an opportunity to look at yourself in depth, and we call it a deep dive, and really understanding what makes you tick, and what are your strengths, and what are your desires, what are your kind of dreams, things, what would you really like to do, and sorting that out, and your soft skills, your hard skills, and then creating star stories based on your work experiences. So part of that process, we'll talk a little bit more about each one of these as we go through the program today. But in the workshop, we spend a good chunk of time on each one of these segments. The next step, you really understand yourself. You've built stories to highlight your accomplishments, and then you pick companies that you want to go to work for. So you're not just, the idea is that rather than just shooting out resumes to every ad in the paper and everything you see on the job boards, without really looking at the companies themselves very hard, we suggest reversing that process and targeting companies. And so there's a whole methodology for doing that, and we talk about. Then once you've gotten to that point, it's time to start putting your marketing materials together, the resume, whether it's a business card or any other things you need, your LinkedIn page, getting that updated, getting your resume synced up with the LinkedIn page, all of that. And then moving over to networking and using those marketing materials in all various forms of networking. And one of the goals of networking is to find a champion in the target companies. Now, you may already, one of the criteria in a target company is if you know somebody that's there, that works there, that's a great first step. But if you don't, then using these networking tools to find somebody you can connect with, so that you're not just a random applicant, but you know somebody and you can talk to that person about the company and get a connection there. And then here's more about talk about strategies, tactics, touch points to develop these target companies. And then finally, the last phase of this is what we call conversation, and that's the interview. And so many job seekers we encounter, have gone through this for all these first phases fairly well. But they get interviews, and then for some reason don't get selected. So the interview is really the key, where you pull it all together. You've got to be able to present yourself effectively to the hiring manager, but do it in a conversational way, so that the power equation is fairly equal. So that because you've targeted companies, you've done a lot of homework, you've got research, you know about the company, and you're evaluating the company just as the hiring manager is evaluating you. So I'm just going to walk through. Then in our workshop, we go through all of those different elements in a little more detail. And then the book, The Champion Way, has worksheets and more details about each one of those how to do it, and outlines and questions and things that you can answer, like when you're doing your deep dive.
Yeah.
So,
Greg, this is Scott. I have a quick question.
Yeah, Scott.
Do you mind if we go back one slide, please?
No.
Yeah. So in looking at the top 5 companies, so there were some companies that I would have, bless you, Gabby, that I would have preferred to have worked for, those that are in the top 100 or 200 best companies to work for and all that. But
Right.
I found, at least as being a finance professional, my skills and experience are pretty transferable between industries. And I think Kim is probably in the same boat that I am. I think Gabby's probably more specialized, being, kind of design and things like that. But there were companies that I'd prefer to work for, but I tended to lean toward my strong network contacts and focusing on companies that they were working for. Now, if they worked for a company I had no interest, but I didn't really spend that much time or effort. But it seems like my network contacts were kind of more of my path in the companies I explored, versus me picking, my top companies and maybe not having any contacts, or maybe strong contacts you could say
Right.
on my behalf. So
That's good input, Scott, and it also reinforces what we're talking about here, because when you're building your companies, the fact that you have a contact already who can, and you've probably one of the things we talk about too is that the first place to start building this list of companies is with people who were either customers of your previous employer, or vendors to your previous employer, or just industry contacts. That's one of the advantages in a professional level management position, like you were in finance. There's professional groups you belong to, and create a network that way. And so using that network is extremely important phase of the process. So and if you've already done the elements over here on the left, and you've determined that you want to stay in that profession and in the finance field, then you can utilize all those contacts and networking contacts, because that's I know in many cases people who have been able to land very quickly because they've had developed a pretty strong industry network prior, either industry or professional network, prior to their job loss, and were able to just use that network to land somewhere else very quickly. But we still recommend, even, for example, if somebody, a colleague of yours, offered, an opportunity at their company, you still want to do that research involved to vet the company, because you really want to make sure you understand what you're getting into, because a lot of it too, we find, is the cultural fit is what really results in a long-term job situation. So and it's hard to assess that even when you're dealing with somebody that works there. They of course know a part of it, but not all of it, and you never know what's going to happen. So you've got to do that homework just as well. So that's really a good point. And Kim, you are probably in that same boat with having a professional group. I don't know if you belong to any, like SHRM around here, or ISPE, or any of those, but
yeah, what I noticed is I've been pretty heads down the last several years, but I've got a
Uh-huh.
master's degree from Pepperdine, and so I've been able to leverage the Pepperdine. Just there's a small group that live in Dallas, in the
Mhm.
Dallas-Fort Worth area, so that's been really helpful. So
Right.
they've introduced me to networking groups, but I've done the path kind of like, I've done kind of a combo approach where my first company that I was interviewing with was a consulting firm, and it was somebody I worked with several
Mhm.
years ago. So she knew me, she knew their firm, and that it was a great cultural fit. They just at the last minute changed their mind that they could bring on somebody without external consulting experience. So that
Hmm.
was a hard pill to swallow. But it was good experience. But I just today talked to Corn Ferry is an organization that I'd like to network in. And I couldn't believe on this call with about 8 people, there was somebody on the call that had several contacts there. So
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, you guys are doing the right things, and so
Yeah. I have
anyway,
another contact at Corn Ferry, Kim, if you want that.
you do.
Not to overwhelm you, but yes.
No, but it's just such a good point. You may think, it's such a big metroplex, but I mean, 2 calls today and have had people that know somebody there. It's great.
Mhm.
well,
I'll make sure.
you're living out what we're trying to help people learn is that
Yeah,
if you get out there, reach out to your network, it's just incredible what starts to happen.
right.
Unfortunately, too many people sit home and try to do their search through the job boards, and that's
Mhm,
the thing, and don't get out and network enough.
right. But I think just if I could share one more thing, I think that,
Yeah.
having your system is so important because just that self-awareness or clarity about what you wanted, that's so critical.
Mhm.
We sometimes have to revisit that a few times.
I agree. When now with doing a workshop the way we're doing it, we don't get people to come back and when they land and talk about how they did it. But when we were having weekly meetings back, when before COVID, we people would come in and talk about what happened, and almost all of them would say that what really turned the corner for them was they had to step back into the deep dive and really look at themselves and really solidify their goals, what they wanted to do. And when they did that, doors started to open, because then I think they were really confident. That's part of that whole process there. And at the first phase is building the confidence level, that you can talk about yourself. You've really looked at all the successes and accomplishments and that sort of thing. It really helps. And having, of course, then one of the things we talk about is the positive attitude is so important in all of this. And sometimes it's hard to do if there's been an unexpected layoff, or if unfortunately sometimes you get fired for some reason, and that's a tough it's tough to get back on the positive track when those things happen. So here's what we need to move forward in order to, so I can really go through this with you today. So in terms of attitude, we say what you are is God's gift to you. What you make of yourself is your gift back to God. And so having this positive attitude is really critical. There's also this Gallup, or this is Indeed research that says 99% of employees surveyed say confidence is extremely important for successful job search. So that's where the first phase of the system is doing this self-audit. We call it the four-way audit. It starts with you taking a good look. And one of the actual methods we recommend, and is to really go through each job you've had for your entire life, going all the way back to the first job you had, like in my case, delivering newspapers when I was 13 years old, and saying, what did you like, what didn't you like, and so on, and going through those just to give you a sense of what is it that you get really excited about, and what is it that you don't, and then also as you move along into career jobs, you start looking at what are the accomplishments that I had at each of these different organizations, depending on how many there are. But you really want to pinpoint accomplishments and results as opposed to duties and responsibilities. But then part of the audit involves, so you're doing your own self-audit, then you want to get feedback from other people. And these could be family members, your spouse, and co-workers, people that anybody who can, that you work with, maybe as a volunteer, whatever it is, so that you get some objective third-party feedback. A third element of the four-way audit is professional assessments. And these are things like the PDP, which I do, or a Myers-Briggs, or a Clifton Strengths. Those kind of things can be really helpful in helping you to pinpoint strengths and be able to communicate effectively about them. Finally, and I think most importantly, is the spiritual side. Going through this process, you want God on your side, and so that's a really important part of it. So why do we do this? One is we tend to forget. Going back helps us to remember some of the things that happened. Some of the good things and the bad things and the successes. And many times, we've been raised to be humble. And so we don't necessarily highlight accomplishments, or we don't really look at certain things that you've done as success stories, and yet they may well be. So we underestimate and we rationalize and say, well, that wasn't that important. And you fail to connect information that could help you. So one thing that's important in this process is being able to connect the dots and saying, by doing these things early in life, it prepared me for the next phase and for things that happened as you went on your career. And of course, today, soft skills are really important in the marketplace, whether it's a tech job or engineering or whatever it is. Soft skills are still significant. And so it's important to not only to highlight and take inventory of your hard skills, but also your soft skills. And these are some professional assessments that we recommend. Usually just one of those of that list. And then, of course, putting God on your team. He's going to be the #1 champion. We recommend contemplative prayer because I think that's an important aspect to it, to just schedule time, whether it's 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, to sit quietly and really don't just listen. It's a time to connect and listen, maybe focus on just focus on listening to God and seeing what comes of it. But it can help to relieve some of the stress that's involved in the process. And of course, God is always a resource when it comes to going through the stress and anxiety of job search. So then the second phase of the program, and then as you went along on that chart, it's one of the things we work on in the workshop is writing star stories. There's not time today to get into that, but hopefully you're all familiar with star stories and know how important they are. So communication is key here. And one of the things in terms of changing the game of job search is this targeting companies versus mass marketing. And so that what that does is help to open up the jobs that are not posted. And there's various sources that have done research on this, people like Gallup and others. And somewhere 70–75% of all jobs never get posted. There are jobs that open up and they get filled through the networking process as opposed to being posted on a job board. And so targeting also allows you to be more targeted on your marketing and using a selling resume rather than just a generic kind of generic bio, and we'll show an example of that. So what we're working towards is being able to make choices about where you want to work instead of taking the first job that comes along. And that process allows you to be in control of it. You are on equal footing with hiring managers. And the interesting thing about doing that well is that it makes you a more desirable candidate, because hiring managers understand that they can't intimidate you and that they've got to sell their company as well as you having to sell your skills and abilities. So part of the targeting process is really looking closely through your deep dive here about what is important to you. You have a set of personal values and you have family values and family needs that you have to account for. You have personality strengths, and this is part of the cultural fit aspect. And then the money stuff comes in too, but and all the different research that's been done on where does pay fit, it's usually third or fourth on the list of what people really want. Doing what you love is important. So it's knowing what that is. And sometimes we don't. I mean, I was one of those. I didn't really have one thing that I just, was totally in love with doing. And so I, kind of ended up in my career by process of elimination. Is kind of the way it went. But it all worked out well, but it was an interesting thing getting there. And then, of course, the really critical thing that seems to be the element for success in any kind of job situation is the culture and work environment. And so when you've got those things pretty well pinned down, then you can pick companies that are going to fit those criteria. And so then it's finding out, Scott, you said, you had people you already knew that worked at different companies. And that's part of the process of building the list. Another way is to just look out there and, there's companies probably here locally you can name off the top of your head. Usually Toyota always comes up, and or Southwest Airlines or one of those. I don't know about that so much anymore. They're getting bad press for Southwest in the area of employee relations, which is the first time I've seen that happening in a significant way. But in any event, there's companies you know about that, but that doesn't always mean they're going to be the best places to go. So, we happen to be, I think we're fortunate living in an area where there are large numbers of job opportunities, large numbers of companies of various sizes. And so it takes, it takes sometimes a little work to develop a list of companies. Now we say 25, but it doesn't have to be that long. I mean, you can, because one of the things you do here is narrow it down to really looking thoroughly at 5 companies. And then if for whatever reason, one of those companies drops out, if you decide you don't want to go there, or let's say, like Kim, you just said you went and interviewed at a company and then they decided not to hire you. Well, if that company was on your list, you'd rotate it off and put another company in to replace it. So that's kind of how you work. And so what we're saying in the process, the system is developing a list of target companies before you start marketing, because then when you do market, you can focus on those companies and look, and especially when you get to the networking phase, when you network with somebody, you can give them specific names. Because when you meet people, and let's say you're in a volunteer organization and you're connecting with 2 or 3 people that you work with on a project, and you can ask them if they know anybody that works at 2 or 3 of the companies that you're interested in. And you also need to let them know that you're in a transition phase so they can help you when they can. And by giving them specifics, they can be more helpful. If you just say, well, I'm trying to find a different job, they really don't know exactly how to help you do that. So then resources to use in finding target companies is the local business journals. The library is a tremendous resource. Chamber of Commerce's, industry organizations, job fairs, economic development offices, and then just driving around town. There's new buildings going up all over the place here, and you can see where new business is coming in, and that's where the business journals come in, and the library can give you access to the business journals and other resources, as well as the chamber. And then we talk about creating the selling resume, which is a 1-pager. This is Jack Bick's resume. He's got I think 9 jobs, over a 50-year career, all laid out in the 1-page format. This is one where there's different opinions about this, but that's why we call this a selling resume, because it's like a commercial on TV. If you notice these days, many of them are just now 15 seconds. It used to be a commercial was normally a minute, then it was 30 seconds, now it's 15 seconds. So they want to get your attention. It's not about going through every detail of your experience and background. And it's important to focus on accomplishments. And you can see in the bullet points under each of the jobs Jack has, and it's hard to read, I know, that he lists out an accomplishment, not a job responsibility. too many times on resumes, you see a list of duties and responsibilities, and the philosophy on it is that the hiring manager, especially like Scott in the finance area, if you're getting hired for, say, a CFO role or controller role or some role in finance, the hiring manager usually knows what the duties and responsibilities are. So it's what they're most interested in is the accomplishments and the results that you've achieved over the years. So then there's social media. This is a key part of the marketing phase. So LinkedIn is, of course, the big dog these days, and when it comes to professional networking. And it's important that your LinkedIn page reflects your resume. In fact, that is typically the place where you can put more detail in there. It doesn't have to be exactly like your resume, but in terms of sequencing and any kind of date information, it definitely needs to match up, because you know that people are going to check that LinkedIn page. And you can put, you really can put a lot of stuff on it. So in fact, Tracy, you're having a program on LinkedIn, right?
Yes, Terry Sullivan is speaking here at All Saints next Tuesday, and it's gonna be fabulous. So Terry is amazing. He's done a Zoom program once before in the beginning, but he's never been here on campus. So it's really exciting. He is one person that doesn't really allow his videos to be out there because he usually charges a lot of money for them, but he's coming to our parish and it's going to be a big gift. So we're very excited about that.
But he will, I know, I think he's still doing it, isn't he? I haven't talked with Terry in quite a while now. We're not using guest speakers in our workshop program. But normally what he will do, if you link with him, he will send you a little booklet that goes through all the steps of getting an effective LinkedIn page put together.
Yeah, so I do have those. That's a good, thank you for reminding me, because I need to circle back to see at what point he wants people to have that. But the other thing is he's willing, Kim or Scott, whomever would like to be kind of an example. He is open to like kind of using an example to go through like real world suggestions as well. So
Yes.
That's, a powerful way. He'll have, like best practices and people that he directs you to in terms of like people who have really great profiles. But I think that's a good, being a volunteer, if you're willing to be out there, you just mean your name's going to get out there and more people are going to see you and what you do. So
And that's the Tuesday. That's this coming Tuesday.
Tuesday the 11th, yes. And share with your friends too. Like I'm going to send a separate email just about his, but it's again, not just people who are looking for a job. This is a lifelong career management skill. They pretty much, I don't know anyone that won't learn something from Terry. Things that we should be doing regularly, just to keep your brand up. Like we live in a world of social media and we are always telling ourselves that used to just be, in real life, but now, whether it's on Facebook, what you're sharing or what your kids are sharing on Snapchat, like it's just a new world that we live in. And so that's what we do to manage our other social side of us.
Right. So we, it's important to really, as part of this, to make sure to check any sites for anything that might have gotten up there that you would rather not have a prospective employer see. So that's always a big thing to go through, Facebook and all of those, Instagram and others, TikTok or whatever else is out there,
So, and one point on that, like you might go from someone else's profile because or I think there's a way to search what your public profile looks like, but
Yeah.
you want to know there might be something from 10 years ago that you don't remember is out there and your privacy settings were public. Well, if you don't have very many public posts, someone who isn't friends of yours on Facebook is going to see that very quickly. So it's not just a matter of looking at your own, looking at yourself from you, but look at yourself through a profile that isn't someone that's a friend of yours. And Google yourself because you know that the employer is going to be doing that.
Right. That's really good advice. Well, we're gonna have to move pretty quickly. We're almost through this. So one of the things we look at too is how to deal with the age issue. And I know many of our attendees are over 50. So there is certainly age discrimination out there. But again, it's kind of an attitudinal thing. You've got to overcome that with confidence. And then in your deep dive, you need to highlight all the positive qualities of the age that you have, the experience, the maturity, the wisdom, and all that comes with age, and then accomplishments as well. And so you just have to own it. If you find a company that seems to be overtly discriminating, well, you need to take, my recommendation, just take them off the list and go on to the next, because it's not worth, fighting that. And then
I know you're trying to get through this quickly, but that also can apply to the other age end of the spectrum too. There can be age discrimination for, younger generation.
younger people.
And
Yes.
wherever you are, like making sure that you're able to, be confident and say some things that might be able to balance where they're going to assume you are.
Yeah, I think it's, part of it is just demonstrating the self-awareness of who you are, which hopefully going through the deep dive really helps you to do that. And then we talk about finding champions and putting your marketing program together, which marketing is about hype, features, and benefits. So it's the benefits that really are critical when it comes to job search. So we go into more of this. Unfortunately, we're not going to be able to spend a lot of time on it, but in the workshop, we go, these things are covered in more details. So one thing we talk about is having an effective work week when you're doing your searches, that you really have to focus on it like a full-time job. It is a full-time job, getting a new job. And, really look at that seriously. And, as you do the work in terms of the deep dive and putting the marketing materials together and doing the research on target companies, I mean, that takes some time. But then it's really getting out, setting, developing target companies and scheduling face-to-face meetings with people. And now that, we're almost back to normal, there's a lot more in-person networking events and job fairs. Now, the negative thing in the paper this morning, there was an article about declining job availability, and that for the first time in quite a long time, that the number of jobs, and I just kind of scanned the headline. I didn't have time to go into the detail, but I think we're kind of headed towards a slowdown. So it may become, as it becomes more challenging to find the right job, then these skills become more important than ever. Finally, we have a communication formula called AIR, which is attention, information, and response. So it's, if you must get the person's attention, or they won't. If you don't, then they're probably not listening to you, and they're not going to hear what's important, the information that you want to share with them. And then when it comes to job search with it, the thing to do there is to ask for a response. So at the end of an interview, asking for, well, can I schedule a follow-up call with you at, next Tuesday at 8 o'clock if I haven't heard from you before then, something like that. So, and there's good examples again in the book about all of this. So, and the AIR formula can be used in just about everything: cover letters, thank you notes, emails, phone calls, voicemails, all of that. So, and as you know, networking is interactive. You want to work that network. And today, too, when you're working target companies and the ones that you don't have a contact in, that's where LinkedIn can come in. These days, when you look at a company, most companies have LinkedIn pages, and they also, through that page, you can look at who all in the company is on LinkedIn. And you might be able to find the hiring manager that way. So here's some of the networking. The standard networking is, there's speed networking. General networking is going to a job fair kind of thing, or going to a chamber event or an industry group event. Indirect networking is networking with, say, friends and neighbors who may not know, they themselves may not be involved with the company, but they may know somebody. And then direct networking is, again, working with people who are part of the company. They may be a colleague of yours, or the hiring manager, anybody that's directly involved. And then other ways to network is through volunteering, taking classes, and scheduling reverse interviews through LinkedIn with people at the target companies that you're looking at. And so this is the champion. Developing a champion is hopefully someone who can introduce you to hiring managers, is knowledgeable about your strengths, can advocate for you, and give you info about the company, but also can help you understand the hiring process within that company. So conversational interviews, I'm just going to run through this quickly, because we're pretty much out of time. So the whole idea of a conversational interview is asking questions. These are some tough questions that you get asked, but one of the things we talk about in a conversational interview is usually one of the first questions interviewers ask you is, tell me about yourself. Tell me a little bit about yourself. And so you should have that one well prepared. It should be no more than about 90 seconds to 2 minutes at the longest. And then you can ask a question back. And, by the way, could you tell me what the 3 most significant characteristics of a successful performer in this role is? And those kinds of questions will get the interviewer then sharing with you some things and give you more insight into what's involved. And there are other questions which unfortunately we don't have time for today, but
Well, we'll just have to have you back.
yeah, I'd be glad to come back. So this is, we're at the end here. These are the four basic elements of the program. One is building confidence through the deep dive and the self-audit, being in control through picking target questions, preparing questions for an interview, developing champions, and then having a conversational interview versus a confrontational interview. So with all of that put together, it creates a lifelong employability experience. So that, okay, I've got something weird happening here.
That's great, Greg. We really appreciate it.
So I do have, one more reminder about our workshop this weekend. And it's 9 to 4 Saturday at St. Jude. And you can register by going to the Career Alliance website, which is stjudecareeralliance.com. So thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you. That was fabulous. So I think that was definitely a great preview for that. The workshop. With the workshop attendance, you get that book that you can also buy on Amazon for a price. So for those of you who are watching it after this Saturday, then that is still available, the book. But we've had Jack and Vic speak before, and it's a really well-researched system. I love that you walk through the steps, and it's not just an arbitrary, let's throw some resumes out there and just apply willy-nilly to everything along the way. So it goes along very along the lines of what we try to do with career ministry. So thank you so much, and thank you for joining, and we hope you have a blessed day, and definitely we're here if you have any other questions. So
All right.
you.
Thank you. Thank you, Greg. Thank you very
Thanks.
much.
Well, you're welcome.
Thanks, everyone.
Take care.